I wasn't supposed to watch that video at all. Boredom. That's all. A hotel, gray walls, and air conditioner that smells like a hospital. The window doesn't open, the shower is a weak drizzle, and the TV only shows channels with barely audible static. I was just scrolling. At 4 in the morning, the brain shuts off, only the fingers work. The next button. Scenes flashed by, someone laughing, someone smoking, someone silent. And then a frame. Pause. She was laughing. On screen, a girl around 25. A smile like my wife's, a little crooked with a dimple on the left. The light fell from the side, tracing the line of her neck. And right where the collarbone almost hides under the skin, a mole. In exactly the same spot. A black dot. I know it by touch. I've kissed it. Many times. A ritual before work. My mind didn't accept it. The first 10 seconds, denial. Then angry curiosity. I rewound. Checked again. Zoomed in. Left of the collarbone. I froze. A FaceTime call. Her voice, you sound tired. Your voice is different. I miss you, she said. And I thought, if it's not her, then why do I feel this emptiness, like I've been abandoned? During the day, I tried to convince myself. It's a coincidence. A body that looks like hers. The smile, maybe. The mole? Probably someone else has one in the same place. Just a coincidence. It happens. But at night, I opened the tab again. Scrolled through. 12th minute. She turns her head. Squints. The dimple. The mole. I knew every mole on her body like a map, not because I had to, but because I loved her. That's love, isn't it? Knowing where to touch so the person smiles, even in their sleep? I couldn't look away. I watched like I was in a coma. My heart beat, but not inside, somewhere nearby, like in a pillow. And where there used to be warmth, it turned thick, dull. Like snow melting in water without touching the bottom. I started noticing details. I came home a day early. Didn't warn her. The key jammed in the lock, odd, it never did before. I went to the bedroom. Her phone was charging. Screen locked. I knew the code, but couldn't enter it. My hand trembled. I just lay on the bed. Stared at the ceiling. And remembered the first time I kissed her there, just left of the collarbone. She laughed, "Are you a fetishist?" And I said, "I just like knowing you're real." A day later, I did something I'd always been afraid to do. I found the video. Put it into an editor. Ran it through filters, slowed it down, compared it to our photos. A perfect match. The mole. The symmetry. Everything matched. Even the belly button piercing small, with a clear stone. That evening I asked her, "When were you last in Miami?" She didn't even blink. 6 months ago. Why? No reason. But inside it felt like a crack had run through everything. And each day it grew wider. Because I started noticing what I hadn't before. That night I woke up. Just sat in the dark. She was sleeping. On her side. Back bare. The mole clearly visible. I looked at her. For a long time. And at some point I realized, even if it wasn't her in the video, I could never go back. Because now I'd see that frame every time. I'd always be looking for proof. And if it was her, then it's already over. I just never got the notification. She turned in her sleep. Her hand rested on my chest. And for the first time in my life, I felt nothing. No pain. No warmth. Just the realization. I no longer know who she is. And worse, I don't know who I've become. I played the video again. Not out of arousal. Not out of jealousy. For proof. Proof that I made it all up. That it's a coincidence, a glitch in perception. That my brain, worn down by sleeplessness, paranoia, and the silence of hotel rooms, was playing cruel games. I wanted to catch myself making a mistake. Find a single frame that would break it all apart. But I didn't. I waited until she fell asleep. Quietly. On her left side, like always. A pillow between her knees. The light from the bedside lamp cast her profile on the wall. I stared at her face. Too peaceful. Too easy. I went out to the hallway, grabbed the laptop. Closed every tab except one. Pressed play again. From the beginning. The video was just over 15 minutes. I knew it by heart, but every time it felt new. She was just there. Living in the frame. Talking, laughing, taking a sip of water from a clear glass. At minute 6, her laugh. She bites her lip. The left one. Just like the night I told her I loved her. She got shy. Said, "You're such an idiot," and turned away. But I remember that bite. It's not just a gesture. It's a reflex. At minute 8, she tucks her hair behind her ear. An everyday movement. Mechanical. She does it before bed when reading. Or when she eats yogurt standing in the kitchen. Muscle memory. You can't fake that. I paused. Took a screenshot. Zoomed in. And for the first time noticed a detail, a thin leather bracelet on her left wrist. Worn. The pattern nearly rubbed off, as if it had been worn for years. And then I remembered yesterday morning she was wearing it. Found it in an old box from my youth, she said. But then explained to me, why is it in a video that's at least 5 years old? Why is it faded in the same way then and now? I stood up, walked to the window. Below, an empty parking lot. The street lamp cast long shadows. In the glass, my reflection. It looked tired, unsure. I looked into my own eyes and didn't recognize the person staring back. The next 2 days I lived between pauses. I pretended. We had dinner together. Laughed. She put on a show, shared silly videos. I replied, cool, funny, nice. But in my head I replayed the 6th minute. The lip bite. The laugh. The bracelet. I started checking drawers. Looking for that box she mentioned. Found 3. All dusty. 1 had postcards. The 2nd, old scarves and theater stubs. The 3rd, nothing. No bracelet. No hint. No box. No trace. I started doubting not just her but myself. Maybe I'm not the victim. Maybe I've become the kind of person who seeks pain? Because every time she comes close and touches me, I don't feel warmth. I feel cold. As if it's not her. As if I'm touching a stranger. And then, a new blow. Her voice in the video. At the 12th minute. She says, sometimes I pretend. The voice. The intonation. The silence that follows. I know that tone. She once said almost the same words when we were watching a documentary about depression. I asked her, does this feel familiar to you? She nodded and said, sometimes it's like I'm underwater. Everything around me sounds, faces, tasks, and I just can't breathe. That was her fear. Her pain. Her truth. And now it's on the screen. Spoken by different lips. With the same break in the voice. I shut the laptop. Didn't save the tab. Just closed the lid. Went to the kitchen. The fridge glowed dimly. Everything around me felt frozen. I poured some water. Drank. Set the glass down. And only then noticed my reflection in the glass door wasn't blinking. I leaned against the wall. Closed my eyes. And what if all this isn't about her? What if I just can't forgive myself for not seeing her drowning when I was right there beside her? Maybe she was always pretending. And I just started noticing too late. I asked about the bracelet. For a second, her hand flinched. A small movement, almost unnoticeable. She smiled, as always, soft, slightly to the side. But her fingers immediately went to her hair. A habitual gesture, but too abrupt, awkward. As if she needed to keep her hand busy to hide something else. From school, she said. Really old, I barely wear it. I nodded. Seemed logical enough. But her eyes. Her eyes slipped downward for a moment, not to me, not to her plate. But to her wrist. A check. Instinct. She didn't lie. No. She just chose what to say. Selectively. Breakfast, same as always. Scrambled eggs, burned toast, her gray robe. Black mug with a crack. Her voice calm, but too even. As if trained. Not a single stray intonation. Even when talking about the weather, she paused just a bit too long. And then a strange shift. By the way, want to go away this weekend? Just the 2 of us. The topic changed abruptly. As if she'd finished performing the scene she needed and moved on to the next. I nodded. But inside something twisted the other way. It wasn't her words. It was the moment. How quickly she looked away after my reaction. As if she was expecting something else. Or afraid of seeing too much. After breakfast, she went to shower. I stayed. Silence in the kitchen, just the sound of water through the wall. I stood up. Slowly. Almost mechanically. Opened her drawer in the dresser. The one with little things. Old receipts, lipstick, the chain she sent for repair. And a case. Leather, worn, with a metal clasp. I knew it. She had taken it out a few times while searching for earrings. I opened it. And among everything, a second bracelet. Exactly the same. Same worn leather. Same faded pattern as if worn for years. One on her wrist now. The other here. I didn't know what was scarier. That she was wearing a bracelet identical to the one in the drawer. Or that she might have forgotten which version she had already shown me. The water was still running. I closed the case. Put everything back as it was. Sat on the edge of the bed. And tried to remember, when did she first mention that bracelet? There was no answer. It had just appeared. In her vocabulary. As if it had always been there. As if I had made it up myself. That day I barely spoke. She didn't notice. Or pretended not to. In the evening she suggested watching an old movie, the one where the main character disappears into a crowd at the end and the woman is left standing with a ring in her hand and an empty look. This time, I wasn't watching the screen. I was watching her. And suddenly I realized, she's not faking. Not in the usual sense. She lives in a version she's built for herself. Remembers selectively. Forgets conveniently. At night, she fell asleep quickly. I didn't. I stared at her wrist. That same bracelet. Too real. Too exact. Too familiar. And at some point I caught myself thinking, what if she's not just forgetting? What if she's rehearsing? Living by a script, changing the details just enough not to get lost? In the morning I woke to voices. Her phone. Someone was calling. She answered softly, stepped out onto the balcony. I stayed in bed, and suddenly understood, everything between us is now on pause, like a video, until the next play button. I knew the weekend was coming, the trip, the script, and in that script I had a role. Not the lead, not supporting, just the one who doesn't ask questions. I'll be late at work, I said. Meetings, calls. In reality, a gray hall, Wi-Fi, and no one asks questions if you have headphones on. I started searching. First, I entered a keyword, the one that flashed in the title of the first video. Then filtered by description. Found them. There were 3. Different stories, different quality. But one detail broke my sense of reality. The bracelet. The same one. Worn leather. Faded pattern. And a name. At the second minute of the second video. She laughs. Someone off-screen asks, "What's your name?" A pause. And she answers, "Elin." Calm. Confident. Without hesitation. As if telling the truth. I wrote down the timestamps. Recorded the voice. Slowed it down. Compared it to how she speaks on the phone. How she answers her mother's calls. How she laughs when I tell her another office story. Not just similar. Identical. I slowed the frames. Watched every blink. How her lips curl into a U. How she touches her cheek when she's embarrassed. Everything matched. Almost painfully. In one of the videos, she turns to the camera and says, "I learned to control myself. Now I can be anyone." Just like that. With the same voice she once used when she told me, sometimes I think if you try hard enough, you can become a new version of yourself. When I got home, she was sitting on the couch. Light from the window fell directly on her knees. A book in her hands. I sat down beside her. Asked calmly, almost distantly, "Have you ever been filmed? For a commercial, maybe? Or something where footage still exists?" She lowered the book. Blinked. "No. Why do you ask?" Her voice steady. The tone correct. But the page in her hand crumpled slightly. Just enough. And that was enough. That night she fell asleep quickly. I didn't. I waited for her breathing to even out. For her face to relax. Then I got up. Opened her laptop. Took a while to start with that familiar creak. I knew the password. We didn't hide things back then. Opened her email. Started searching. The sent folder was empty. But there was an archive. Old. Untouched. Only one address there. Elin.pink92 at first email 8 years ago. Before we met. Last one. A month after our first trip to visit my parents. The content mundane. Casual. But the tone strange. Thanks for the casting. Ready for the next stage. Please don't post anything without my final approval. I closed the laptop. Looked at her. She was asleep. Breathing steadily. No sign of anything hidden. But now I knew. She had another name. She had another voice. She had another script. And at some point she either chose to leave it. Or to rewrite it. I said the name. Out loud. With no intention. No accusation. Just a sound. Like I remembered it from some article. Or a song. Elin Pink. Her reaction was instant. But not sharp. Not with words. With silence. She was sitting across from me. A candle between us. A little wine. The appearance of dinner. The illusion of comfort. She was talking about wanting to change jobs. About being tired. About craving something of her own. Something free, something new. I barely listened. I was watching how she talked. How she held her fork. How she never looked me in the eye. And then, between a pause and a sip, I asked, "Have you ever heard the name Elin Pink?" A pause. Exactly 1 second. But in that second, her lashes trembled. Her shoulders lifted slightly, as if chilled. Her hand settled on her knee, uncertain, as if her body was searching for something solid to anchor itself to. "No," she said. "Who's that?" I smiled. "No idea. Just popped into my head. Pretty name, isn't it?" She nodded, too slowly, returned to her wine, took a sip, but her tongue seemed uncooperative, and her voice had changed, lower, drier, rehearsed. She didn't lift her gaze again. That night, I waited until she fell asleep. The curtains were half drawn, the room dim, her breathing even, calm. I got up, went to the closet, opened the bottom drawer, an old document box, gray, thick. We kept everything there, diplomas, tax files, insurance. But in one envelope, a separate folder. The one she never showed me. Not even once. I opened it. First, driver's license. Name, Elena. Birth date, matches. Photo, her. But the signature. The signature was different. Not the one she uses on cards to her mom. Not the one she leaves on notes on the fridge. Here, the letters were more stretched. The handwriting neater. More formal. And lower among the papers, a receipt. Recipient name, Elena Pink. State, Nevada. Date, 2 years before we met. I froze. Sat down on the floor. Documents in my lap. Stared at them. At the two names. Two versions of one person. And I suddenly understood. What I called wife was a role. A persona I believed in because I wanted to believe. She was like water taking the shape of the vessel I had offered her. I went back to bed. She was lying on her back. Face peaceful. Fingers just barely touching the pillow. Like an actress between takes. Like someone who's forgotten who they were before the scene began. I lay down beside her. Closed my eyes. And suddenly it became unbearably quiet. Because now I knew. She doesn't lie. She simply doesn't say everything. And me? All this time I wasn't looking for the truth. I just wanted to know who exactly I had loved. I stopped rewatching the video. Now I was rewatching memories. Every "I love you" she had ever said sounded different. As if those words always had an accent I'd never noticed before. It had always been there, I just used to be part of her truth. Now I wasn't. I started avoiding her gaze. Not deliberately. It just happened. She'd walk into the room and I'd already be looking away. At my phone, at a mug, out the window. At anything but her eyes. As if in her pupils something new might reflect, something I wasn't ready to see. Sometimes she would place a hand on my shoulder with that same soft, familiar motion. I'd nod. Smile. But inside everything stilled. Because I no longer knew whose hand it was. Or whether it was just a well-fitted mask tailored to my need for closeness. One morning she was making breakfast. I sat at the table, watching her back. The way she reached for the pan. The way she tied her hair into a messy knot. The way she hummed something from the 90s under her breath. And suddenly I felt something strange. I didn't know who was in front of me. The body was familiar. The rhythm of her movements recognizable. But like an actress playing the same role for years. So long that she couldn't tell anymore if this was her or just a character she'd learned to inhabit. She turned, smiled. "Want me to reheat the toast?" I shook my head. "No, it's fine." She came closer. Kissed me on the temple. Her palm on the back of my head, gentle, habitual. And still, I didn't believe it. That evening, when we got into bed, she asked, "Are you avoiding me?" I froze. The answer came automatically. "Just tired." But my voice betrayed me. It sounded unsure. Hollow. Even to myself, unfamiliar. She didn't push. Just turned to face the wall. And I felt that same pause grow between us again. The one that used to mean safety. Now it meant something left unsaid. At night, I played the video. The same file. The same 12th minute. But this time not for analysis. I wanted to understand, what do I feel? What do I feel looking at her there? And how does it compare to what I feel here? And here's what's strange. The video used to hurt. Stir anger, suspicion. Now it brought pity. And a kind of reluctant respect. Because there she was herself. Maybe in a different life, but real. No facades. No family rituals. No worn-out smile she puts on when she comes home and asks how my day went. Beside me now was a construction. A version. Someone she invented so she could be loved. And suddenly I asked myself, if I fell in love with a mask, who did I actually lose? The real her? Or the one she created for me? And what's worse? That she was pretending? Or that I wanted her to? I closed the laptop. Light from a street lamp slipped through the curtain gap. I looked at her sleeping face, breathing evenly, mouth slightly open, hand under her cheek. Beautiful. Mine, but as if pieced together from parts of someone else. And then I understood. Sometimes love isn't a feeling. It's a script someone mistook for a documentary. I didn't say a word, just watched as she poured tea into my mug. The same crack at the rim, the same routine, leaves, milk, 2 minutes to steep. And all the while, her fingers barely touched the handle as if the mug were fragile. I sat across from her and said nothing. Not because there was nothing to say, but because it had all already been said. Once. Wordlessly. Morning went by according to the script. 7:30. Bathroom mirror fogged up. She hummed the same tune she had for years. I remembered it from when we lived in that old rented flat with the leaky faucet. Back then, her voice in the bathroom was warm, like fresh bread out of the oven. Now, it's like a recording playing in another room. No body. No meaning. I sit at the table, the mug in front of me. Black. A crack runs through the ceramic, almost reaching the bottom. I run my finger along it. And suddenly I realize this is it. The symbol. Things don't break all at once. They crack. Slowly. Silently. And then they simply can't hold their shape anymore. She sits down across from me. Places her hand on mine. Are you okay? I nod. And in that moment I realize it's not for her. It's for me. To stop myself from shattering completely. To stay afloat somewhere, somehow. Because inside I've already stepped out the door. No suitcase. No slam. Just gone. I bury myself in work. Come home late. Turn off my phone. Sometimes I sleep on the couch, explaining it away with, I was reading and fell asleep. She notices. Of course she notices. She tries to bring us back, pancakes in the morning, jokes, a weird song in the kitchen. Sometimes she hugs me from behind. Long silent. As if she's waiting for me to turn around. But I don't. I just watch her play the part. Trying to be the woman I once loved. The problem is I now know it's a part. And even if she's lived in it down to the bone, no rehearsal can save it. One night, after she'd fallen asleep, I got up. Stepped onto the balcony. The air was sharp, smelled of pine and damp. I went into the storage room, looking for an old contract. Instead, I found a notebook. Same pen we keep in the drawer with loose keys and receipts. Handwriting hers. But not the same one she uses to write milk or call the dentist. Here the letters were neater. More careful. As if she knew someone might read it someday. I closed the notebook. Put it back. A script where my love had been a variable. Not an anchor. A vulnerability. And now every "how was your day" sounds like a test. Every touch, a signal, is it still holding? I nod. I reply. I laugh. But with each passing day, my yes gets quieter. The final version of silence isn't absence of words. It's knowing that words have lost their meaning. She didn't expect me to show the photo. And I didn't expect her not to deny it. The evening was ordinary. Saturday. Rain pattering softly on the glass. Wine, a blanket, a show in the background. She curled up beside me, wrapped her arms around me like she used to, her forehead resting on my shoulder. As if everything was still okay. Only I knew this would be the last time while we were still pretending. I took out my phone. Opened the folder. Chose neither the first nor the last. Just one still. Simple. Not provocative. Just a face. That smile. That dimple on her cheek. That mole just left of the collarbone. And the bracelet, that same one. Narrow, leather, worn as if soaked in someone else's touch. I turned the screen to her. Is this you? There was no accusation in my voice. No pressure. Just a question. No subtext. No expectation. Say it and we'll end the performance. She froze. Looked. For a long time. As if waiting for a trap. Or a miracle. She blinked. And she didn't say, "What is this?" Didn't say, "Are you crazy?" She just looked at it. For a long time. And then lowered her eyes. That was me. 3 words. No drama. Like someone had pulled a knife out of a wound and now only silence was flowing. Not blood. Not a scream. Just that sensation that nothing holds its shape anymore. I nodded. I don't know why. Just a gesture. To close the moment. Why didn't you ever tell me? A pause. Long. Because then you wouldn't have chosen me. We were quiet. She didn't cry right away. But then her eyes filled. The tears were quiet. No sobbing. No words. As if something inside her broke off too. Something that had been held together by honest lies. I wanted to start over, she whispered. From a blank page. Without all of that. I wanted to say something. Ask. Understand. Or scream. Smash a glass. grab her by the shoulders, make her explain. But nothing came. No anger. No pity. No relief. Only one thing. I didn't know how to talk to someone who had stopped being part of my story. Not because they left, but because all along they were someone else. And now even the truth sounded like a line from a script, written for a different audience. She kept making coffee in the mornings. I kept washing her cup. Once that had been a ritual, something almost intimate. Now it was habit. She'd leave the cup at the edge of the table. I'd wash it later. No emotion. No thanks. We both did it not to preserve anything, but to avoid provoking something. There were no more touches between us. No requests. No questions. Only politeness. Like neighbors who know too much. We kept living together. For a while. Not out of convenience. Not even out of fear. But rather as if to be sure that it was truly dead. That it wasn't resentment. Not a pause. But an actual ending. She stopped asking what time I'd be home. I stopped asking where she had been. Our conversations became short. Like bank texts. Where's the salt? Drawer. Thanks. Sure. And that was it. In the evenings, she read. I watched the news. Not because I cared, but because I didn't want to hear her turning pages. And the silence that once felt cozy, now scratched. Not because it was loud, but because there was no hope left in it. Her closet grew emptier. I didn't notice right away. Just one day I opened the door and saw it was almost bare. 2 hangers on the left. Empty. The dresses I remembered gone. No boxes. No luggage. No fuss. She had just started leaving, like on tiptoe. Quietly. So I wouldn't hear. We no longer talked about what happened. Never brought up the past. Didn't try to figure out the future. She knew. I knew. We were both afraid of the crash. And in the end, we destroyed everything silently. Sometimes when she was out, I'd just sit in the kitchen. Let my gaze drift to the walls, the shelves, the fridge handle. Everything was still in its place. Everything was just like before. Except us. We didn't disappear loudly. Not dramatically. We just faded. Like steam in the bathroom, vanishing without trace or meaning. I didn't leave a note. Didn't slam the door. Didn't say goodbye. Didn't check the time. Didn't take a final breath to remember. I just got up in the morning, put on a shirt, and didn't invite her to breakfast. She was asleep, face buried in the pillow as always. Hand under her cheek, fingers slightly curled. No ring. We'd stopped wearing our rings a month ago. No discussion. We just stopped. As if we silently agreed this scene no longer needed props. I went to the kitchen. I came back to the bedroom. Looked at her. In the morning light, she looked tired. Not guilty. Not pitiful. Not beautiful. Just ordinary. Real. Without the mask. Without the name that wasn't hers. I didn't feel angry. Didn't feel the need to wake her, to talk, to find closure. I no longer felt love as obligation. What we had didn't die from betrayal. Not from lies. Not from secrets. It died from the inability to be ourselves. From the role she couldn't drop. And the one I could no longer play. I packed my things. No, not things. Just documents. A folder. To remember who I was. In this play. What lines I'd been given. Which scene was the final one. At the door, I looked back. The room. Same walls. Same books. Same curtains with the faded edge. The shadows fell, as always, into the corners. It smelled like coffee. And something else, something lingering in the air without a name. And in that silence, final, unfeigned, I realized. I had never been betrayed. I was just written into the wrong script. I wasn't the hero. Not the victim. Not the beloved. I was a supporting character. And now I step out of frame. Not out of pride. But out of truth. Out of freedom. Because there's no point staying in someone else's film. Once you finally know who you are, and that you no longer need a script.